Hello, students. Welcome to this lecture on prehistoric and Indus Valley women. This lecture explores the earliest phases of Indian history to understand women's social position before written records. In prehistoric times and the Indus Valley civilization, women appear as active members of society, not confined to domestic spaces. Archaeological evidence such as tools, figurine, ornaments, and burial goods reveal that early societies were more balanced and cooperative rather than later patriarchal systems. The importance of women in agriculture, craft, and ritual life shows that gender divisions were functional rather than discriminatory. Early families depended equally on men and women for survival. The discovery of the mother goddess figurine in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro suggests that fertility and female energy were highly valued. These societies respected motherhood as the source of continuity and prosperity. Unlike later ages, there is no evidence of parda, child marriage, or gender based restrictions. Women's identity was tied to contribution, not subordination. By studying this period, students can see how gender equality existed in practical terms long before formal laws or written philosophies. The prehistoric and Indus Valley stages set the foundation for understanding the later shifts that occurred in the Vedic and post Vedic age, where male authority gradually replaced partnership. The prehistoric period has no written text, so scholars rely on material evidence from archaeology and anthropology to reconstruct women's lives. Excavations at Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalibangan, and Lothal have yielded terracotta figurines, pottery, jewelry, seals, and domestic tools that reveal a developed urban society where women participated in economic and religious activities. Female figurine found in homes and shrines point to goddess worship and female divinity. Anthropological comparisons with matrilineal tribal societies in northeastern India and South Asia help scholars understand how early kinship might have been traced through the mother's line. The absence of weapons in many female graves and the presence of ornaments, mirrors, and food items suggest that women's roles were connected to prosperity and family welfare. Seal inscriptions and household artifacts display both male and female participation in trade and craft. These findings confirm that women were visible, valued, and independent within their social structures. The archaeological method allows historians to recover women's history even when written sources are silent. It also reveals that equality was not merely an abstract ideal, it was a live reality in early Indian civilizations. Prehistoric societies functioned on cooperation, not hierarchy. Both men and women hunted, gathered food, and made tools. Women's reproductive role gave them a central position in family and social life. Maternal functions were linked with leadership, as women ensured continuity of generations and community well being. Archaeological findings from early human settlements show no gender segregation in work or space. Burial goods, often placed equally for men and women, indicate respect for both. In these early communities, power was shared because survival depended on mutual labor and shared decisions. The idea of private property or male dominance had not yet developed. Men and women were partners in survival rather than competitors for control. The balanced structure of prehistoric families suggest an egalitarian social order where authority came from experience, not gender. The study of this phase helps students understand that inequality is not a natural or uh, uh, eternal condition. It is a historical construction that emerged later when property, inheritance, and organized religion started favoring male authority. Many early societies followed matrilineal systems where descent and property passed through the mother's line. Even today, we have some communities in South India. Archaeological evidence and anthropological parallels show that women were central to kinship identity. They were respected as life givers and resource managers. Matrilineal organization did not necessarily mean female role, but rather equality and complementarity. Decisions were often collective, with the elder women having significant influence. The domestic and social space revolved around the mother, who controlled food resources and childcare. Men and women shared public responsibilities, but women had authority within the home and community rituals. This pattern is seen in remnants of tribal societies that still preserve matrilineal traditions in India's northeast and parts of Kerala. Matriarchal elements in prehistoric culture reflect reverence for feminine power, which you can say later transformed into religious symbols like Shakti. Understanding these early systems reveals that patriarchy was not the original social order, but a later development shaped by changing economic and political structures. This perspective restores women's historical agency and challenges the idea that leadership was always male. Emergence of mother goddess cult. You see, the mother goddess cult was discovered in Indus sites stands as the most vivid symbol of early reverence for women. Numerous terracotta figurines depicting female forms with elaborate ornaments and fertility symbols prove that the feminine principle was worshipped as the source of creation. This goddess represented the nurturing power of nature, ensuring fertility of land, animals, and people. Shrines inside homes suggest that the divine was integrated into daily life, not limited to temples or priesthood. The goddesses symbols trees, serpents, and animals linked human life to ecology and cosmic balance. The absence of male deities of equal prominence in this phase indicates that divine power was primarily conceived as maternal, something unique to this part of the globe or religious practice. This worship was not only religious, but it was cultural also. It expressed gratitude to women for their vital role in sustaining society. Later Hindu traditions of Shakti, Parvati, and Durga continue this heritage. Studying the mother goddess helps students understand how women's biological and social functions were celebrated, not suppressed in the earliest phase of civilization. Women as producers and craft specialists. Archaeological evidence shows that women in the Indus Valley were active participants in economic production. Many household tools, spinning wheels, and clay models found in settlements indicate involvement in pottery, weaving, bread making, and food processing. In some areas, women specialized in textile work and processing. In some areas, in their role in managing domestic and craft production, gave women economic importance and autonomy. Women likely controlled surplus goods for household exchange, reflecting trust and authority in managing resources. The equality of male and female artifacts in workshops suggests no gender based exclusion. The craftsmanship and uniformity of items like beads and bangles reveal skill, discipline, and creative expression. Through these contributions, women became the foundation of both family economy and urban prosperity. This economic independence gave them respect in society and shaped later perceptions of female industriousness in Indian culture. Early craft participation shows that labor and dignity were deeply connected for women long before industrialization. Household and family structure. The houses of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro show advanced design with kitchens, courtyards, and bathing areas, indicating attention to domestic comfort and hygiene. Women likely managed these internal spaces and organized the family's daily life. Household artifacts such as grinding stones, pottery, and storage jars suggest systematic food management and preservation. Figurines found inside homes reflect the spiritual role of women as protectors of family harmony. The domestic sphere was not a site of isolation, but a center of economic and ritual activity. Women probably supervised servants or assistants in larger households and participated in family trade decisions. The balance between production and spirituality in home organization highlights women's multifaceted role. Their management ensured continuity, health, and moral order. The respect shown to women's domestic work in this period contrasts sharply with later times when uh, domestic work became inferior and it led to confinement, replacing autonomy. Understanding the Indus household teaches that the home once represented shared labor and dignity, not subservience. Dress and adornment. The terracotta and bronze figurines from Indus sites show women wearing rich jewelry such as necklaces, bangles, and earrings, and of course, headdresses. These decorations indicate both aesthetic appreciation and social identity. The famous dancing girl statue from Mohenjo-daro, adorned with bangles and a confident posture, symbolizes self expression and grace. Cosmetic boxes, combs, and mirrors discovered in excavation suggest that personal grooming was part of everyday life. These items show agency and self awareness rather than vanity. Dress and ornamentation were likely expressions of individuality and social participation, not tools of control. Women also engaged in trade of ornaments, linking them to the urban economy. The diversity of adornment materials, shell, gold, copper, stone, proves wide trade network. Such evidence undermines stereotypes of ancient women as passive or dependent. Instead, they were creators and consumers of beauty, using appearance to express identity and confidence within their communities. Religious and ritual life. Religious life in the Indus Valley is centered on fertility, nature, and female divinity. Numerous goddess figurines, sacred trees, and animal motifs appear in both domestic and public spaces. These findings suggest women's direct participation in religious ceremonies. The presence of female priests or ritual specialists is possible, supported by artifacts showing women in meditative or offering positions or postures. Worship of the mother goddess symbolized gratitude to nature's creative power and reinforced social respect for motherhood. Rituals were likely seasonal, linked to harvest, rainfall, integrating spiritual and economic life. Women's dual role as nurturers and worshippers blended the sacred and the practical. Their involvement in ritual gave them authority and visibility in the moral life of the community. A religion was inclusive and life affirming, celebrating partnership between men, women, and nature. This early spiritual equality stands in contrast to the later exclusion of women from priestly roles. Well, economic participation of women, let us see, economic activity in the Indus cities was complex and women were an integral part of it. Evidence shows women worked in household industries, textiles, pottery, and trade of ornaments and spices. They likely assisted in managing granaries and food distribution. Some seals may have been used by women merchants or officials. Women contributed both labor and organization, controlling storage and barter within extended families. Their visibility in the workforce ensured social respect and financial stability. The absence of a strict gender division in production contrasts with later agricultural societies, where men monopolized property. Urban prosperity depended on cooperative work, and women's skills formed its backbone. Their role in the economy demonstrates how equality was maintained through participation, not separation. The decline of women's autonomy began only when property owners and inheritance systems shifted towards patriarchal control. Well, property and inheritance practices. We have direct evidence of property laws in the Indus Valley, uh, uh, the which is unavailable. The direct evidences are unavailable, but archaeological patterns suggest equality. Graves of men and women often contain similar objects, indicating comparable social value. Joint family burials imply shared ownership and collective responsibility. Anthropologists argue that inheritance may have been matrilineal, similar to later tribal customs where lineage followed the mother's side. Women possibly retained rights over personal items and jewelry, passing them to daughters. With the rise of private property in later centuries, these shared systems disappeared, leading to male inheritance and exclusion of women from economic control. The study of prehistoric inheritance reminds students that gender equity in property existed naturally when resources were community based. Economic equality deteriorated not because of religion but because of the emergence of ownership, surplus, and class division. This perspective helps to question modern inequalities that claim ancient sanction but actually arose later. The shift from communal to patriarchal societies began with agriculture, private property, and organized warfare. As surplus wealth increased, men sought control over inheritance and family lineage. The mother centered order gave way to father centered systems where descent and property passed through males. Women's religious symbols were replaced by male gods of power and war. This transition was gradual, driven by material changes rather than ideology alone. Women's social and spiritual influence declined as authority concentrated in male heads of families. Economic dependency and exclusion from decision making followed. Understanding this transition is crucial because it shows that patriarchy was not divine or inevitable. It was a historical outcome of changing production patterns. Recognizing its origins helped modern society challenge its continuation and restore balance. The prehistoric era stands as proof that gender equality once coexisted with development and stability. When the Vedic civilization emerged, it inherited Traces of Indus traditions. Early hymns respected women as participants in rituals and learning. Education and marriage choices remained flexible. The decline began later with Brahmanical interpretation that confined women to domestic roles and uh, helped strengthen patriarchy. Comparing Indus evidence with Vedic text helps trace how equality slowly eroded. The initial balance between genders in both civilizations show cultural continuity rather than rupture. The respect for the feminine as divine energy persisted in Vedic deities like Aditi and Saraswati. This continuity demonstrates that a reverence for women wisdom was a consistent theme in Indian thought. However, institutional religion and property based society later converted reverence into control. The link between Indus equality and Vedic reverence reminds students that patriarchy emerged through reinterpretation, not cultural essence. Ancient Indian civilization began with balance, not bias. Major Indus sites such as Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Lothal, and Dholavira reveal an organized urban culture where women were active in daily and ritual life. Female figurines, bangles, beads, and cosmetic items dominate excavations. Equal grave goods for both sexes indicate comparable social positions. Urban planning, including public baths and wide streets, suggests women's mobility and participation in public spaces. Artifacts related to weaving, pottery, and trade connect women to the economic network. The material record confirms that gender segregation was minimal. Every layer of archaeological data, from domestic tools to divine figurine, proves that women were visible, respected, and essential to the civilization's prosperity. These findings form the factual base that challenges patriarchal myths about women's historical inferiority. Material evidence becomes the voice of those left out of written history. Scholarly interpretation, historians and archaeologists have offered various interpretations of women's position in the Indus Valley civilization. C.F. Thomas described early societies as fundamentally symmetrical, where men and women cooperated equally. A.S. Altecker argued that women's status in ancient India was satisfactory compared to later eras. Feminist scholars view the Indus culture as a symbol of gender partnership, supported by the prominence of the mother goddess and economic participation of women. Others note that equality was practical rather than ideological. It came from shared work and responsibility. While interpretations differ, all agree that women were not secluded or oppressed. Modern research confirms that patriarchal restrictions developed later. These academic views help students critically evaluate historical evidence instead of accepting myths of continuous female subordination. The Indus woman emerges as independent, respected, and central to social stability. Significance for modern gender studies. Studying the prehistoric and Indus Valley periods challenges the myth that patriarchy is ancient or natural or religious. It shows that early equality was linked with economic cooperation and community welfare. For modern gender studies, this lesson is crucial. Inequality is a product of social and economic changes, not biological destiny. Understanding this history strengthens arguments for women's empowerment today. The ancient Indian respect for the feminine can inspire current movements seeking justice, sustainability, and balance. Revisiting early societies reveals that gender harmony is compatible with progress. It also highlights the danger of losing equality when wealth and power become concentrated. Modern reforms can draw legitimacy from these deep cultural roots, proving that gender equality is both a historical legacy and a future goal. Conclusion. Let us conclude her lecture. Women in prehistoric and Indus Valley times enjoyed practical equality and visibility that later ages failed to sustain. They worked, created, worshipped, and led their communities without discrimination. Their decline began not from nature or faith, but from changing economics and social structure. Archaeology uncovers this forgotten balance, showing that respect for women is deeply Indian in origin. By understanding this early harmony, we can reinterpret the past not as continuous oppression but as cycles of equality and loss. This awareness empowers modern learners to view gender justice as restoration rather than innovation. The story of the prehistoric woman is not one of silence but of strength, a reminder that civilization began with partnership. The challenge today is to rebuild that partnership through education, awareness, and respect for the same values that once shaped the world's earliest sites. And for this, what we need is to change the mindset of the people, not only the laws. Thank you.